Professor Raymond Noble, Department of Ancient History, log entry number 2. I believe I have made it to distant past.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Well, sometimes that is better.
I like to dissect girls, if you know I'm utterly insane.
Have you checked the children?
Michael!
Beware the stare of Mary Shaw.
Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
I myself am strange and unusual.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
I just can't take no pleasure in killing.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
You want to know what happens to an eyeball when it gets punctured?
The juice is loose.
Unpleasant dreams.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The Terror Talks. I'm your host, Jeremy.
And I'm Ansley.
And on this episode, we are talking about Folklore Haunted House, located in Acworth, Georgia. So, we're not going to waste any time. We're going to dive right in. This is my third time? I'm going with third time. That's a good round number. It's not a round number at all. I'm going with, this is my third time getting to attend Folklore. This would be Ansley's second time, but technically her first, because the first time she went was for a Valentine's Day event that they had last year or the year before, I believe. And that was her first time getting to experience it. But now she finally got to experience the full show, you know, all Halloween lighting and things like that. So this was really her first, like, full time getting to do it.
Yeah, when we went for the Valentine's haunt, it was kind of cool to go through without all the lights, but I was missing a lot of the, you know, the action. Because, of course, you had the actors and everything, but you couldn't even see anything too much because they gave you the little battery-operated candle and you walked through with that. But this time, I got to see everything, and all of y'all know how detail-oriented I am. I absolutely love details, and I got to see this beautiful set work, and I got to, like, experience a lot of the good scares. Yeah, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, there is a lot to enjoy here at Folklore. There's a lot of really wonderful moments that are just absolutely blow your mind when you go to this haunt. So from the minute you get in there, in terms of set work, the set work is phenomenal.
You say that a lot. Like, you need to, like, get a thesaurus.
The set work is stupendous.
Stunning.
Stunning. It is stunning. I love it. In any case, the set work in Folklore is very much highly professional level. Like, you walk in there and you are on, like, the set. And that's the beautiful thing of Folklore, is you get to walk into the story. Which we actually, before we go any further, I guess we should let y'all hear this. We got to meet with the showrunner and actor and content person and all of that fun stuff, GM, all of that for Folklore. His name is Ryan, and he was absolutely amazing. His character name is Twitch. And that's exactly what he does. He twitches a lot when he walks around the grounds of Folklore. But he was so very kind to meet with us before we even got in the haunt, and was happy to answer any questions that we had, just sort of preliminary questions before getting in there. And also gave us some background on the haunt, which, going back, you know, we're going to talk about some of it, but going back and listening to it on our drive, we realized, oh my gosh, like, oh, that I see the connection now. That makes sense. So, we're going to take a short little thing here to let y'all hear our interview with Ryan before we enter the haunt.
The one with all the questions. I'm usually the one behind the camera.
I guess, what can we expect this year from y'all?
So this year, we have upstairs, well, we've done a couple things. So this year upstairs, we have the Winters Estate. It is very much a more story-driven haunt this year. It is about the Winters family who have moved in. They're your typical northeastern 1920s era kind of rich family, except they're also evil. The dad is a renowned surgeon and doctor who also was tired of the pesky little ethics that he was running across regarding his experiments. So he traveled abroad, started learning things like alchemy. Along his travels, he met who would become Lady Winters. She is the leader of a coven. She dabbles in necromancy, rituals, things like that, trying to summon very old eldritch evils into this world.
Nice.
They have taken up residence in the estate. They have 2 children who are sadistic and psychotic, who like to play with their toys being the guests, anyone else who's unfortunate enough to wander in. And when they are done, they like to do things like any good child does when they put away their toys, by stuffing those bodies in the walls.
Awesome.
Because of what they've done, it has created sort of a beacon of evil here that has also drawn in just other monsters and nasties that have been around, and they have created sort of a legacy of evil that will stretch forth well past their time here. That's upstairs.
Okay.
Downstairs we have Maze of Madness. It's a new attraction. It is whereas Winter's Estate is very story-driven, very world-building, it is random, it is chaos. It is 4 generally themed areas. We have an actor in each one, and that is designed to be basically whatever. Whatever somebody wants to do, whatever we want to throw down there, will fit somewhere within there.
Nice.
When you come back, different nights, it's very possible you will see completely different monsters down there.
Oh wow,
It's
that's cool.
designed to just be a very different kind of thing.
Nice.
Internally, we also use it as sort of I like to call it our lot light attraction, whereas if we have somebody who we think might work out well in the lot, we'll put them down there first, because it's very actor driven, there's not as many animatronics, not as many places to hide. It's very much reliant on them giving a performance.
Okay, cool.
We figure it's a nice way to kind of like a hybrid thing where before somebody goes out there, because sometimes I'm sure you guys know, acting out there, totally different than acting in there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it's kind of a way to let them get a feel for what it might be like, with still having some support, still have some of that scenery and that music and things like that.
Right. How many actors would you say y'all have working out here?
So normally we have 4 downstairs, and then upstairs we have usually somewhere between probably 18 and 21, 22.
Okay.
So we have a couple of spots that we consider like our unessential spots, and we'll fill in if we have coverage or if there's things that we need to have extra actors for. But we generally try to have between both attractions, about maybe 22 to 25 people.
All right, nice. Anything you have?
No, I'm usually the detail-oriented person.
So you'll have questions after we come out?
We'll meet up again when you're done. When you come back out and you're done with both attractions, just head up to the ticket booth and they'll call me unless you see me running around. So.
Okay. Yep. All right. Well, I guess that we'll get out there and get into it. So you just got to hear from Ryan all of the cool stuff about folklore, all of the lore behind the haunt, the main haunt. So like he said, the main haunt, the upstairs haunt, Winter's Estate, is very much story driven, and you can feel that when you go through this haunt. Like, they spared no expense going through there. Like, you can tell every piece of detail, every little piece of the story is there, and it's done in a very unique and cool way. Like, everything is so well, you really feel like you have walked into this house, this old rundown house, somewhere that is, overrun by the people, these evil, the evil family. Yeah, I was like, what is the word I'm looking for here? So I absolutely loved that. Some really cool stuff. And then in the Maze of Madness, he said that was very much sort of like the warm up thing for like actors who want to work out in the midway. You sort of put them to the test there and let them kind of test your strength. See, do you have what it takes? And I actually think that's a genius concept To sort of, because that way that haunt is a little less scary for you. So, it kind of lets you chill out a little bit, catch your breath. I think the downside is that you do have to go to that one second. So I think it would be kind of neat if you could maybe go to that one first, just because it is a little lighter. It's not as heavy. But that's just me.
Yeah, it kind of would be a little bit interesting to have a choice in what haunt you do first. But at the same time, the first haunt lets you out at the entrance of the second haunt.
Right. So, I mean,
it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's no question about that. I guess it just, because one is a little more intense than the other. Because, like, I mean, if you go back and listen, I was just getting scared left and right going through that haunt. Like, I mean, granted, that's a typical thing for me. I'm always getting scared going through these haunts. But they were wrecking my shit going through here. There were some that you wouldn't even think would get you, and then they got you. And, like, there were some really wonderful moments going through there. I love, like I said, I don't want to give too much away, as usual, but definitely want to mention the notable moments all throughout. There are so many really big sets throughout this haunt, and one of the first ones you walk into is this gorgeous, like, Victorian style or old Victorian style house. It's kind of run down, but it looks like you've walked off the street and into somebody's home.
Yeah. And it's not just like somebody's house, it's like a demented hoarder at times.
Right. Yeah, no, there's a bunch of random stuff just sort of strewn about everywhere, but it works perfectly. And what I love about a lot of the rooms in this haunt is that you get to revisit them multiple times in a few places.
And you get to see them from different angles, and, like, sometimes you get to experience other people's fear because you get to see them through the little walkway.
Yes.
And I kind of like that. It is a way for you to, like, see how close the groups are to you, because you've been to that area before and you know how long it took you to get there. So it's I think it's kind of like interesting to be like, oh, well, we've got a group coming and they're in this room, and we hit this room, this room, this room, and this room before we got to where we are now. So that's about how far they are. And that's actually very helpful for people like us that like to walk a little bit slower, because we like to go through and, like, enjoy the hunt. Like, actually be in that moment and, like, take in the sets and take in just that entire scene. So it was kind of helpful to me, honestly.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. That was one of those things. Since the first time I've gone through there, they've always had in some form or fashion where you would end up on the other side of a room. Maybe not always in the capacity that you do now, because I think there was at least 3 or 4 occasions going through there where that did occur. One time at the beginning, another time, well, actually, like 2 rooms back to back, you sort of experienced that, and that was a really cool thing. And I've always thought that was really neat to be able to sort of look, hey, I was just over there, sort of deal, and see, like, oh, did those people get scared the same way I did? You can kind of gauge their fear and see if they're as big of a chicken as you are. So it's a beautiful thing. It really is a beautiful thing. The actors in here, really all of them are phenomenal, I think. I don't think anybody... Well, there was a couple that I was like, what are you doing? I don't necessarily love the choice.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Well, there was actually one in the main haunt. I was not a fan of their choice.
Yeah, I think I know the one you're talking about.
Who?
The girl that was speaking to us basically in a pitch that only dolphins could hear.
No, actually, that was not the one I was thinking of. Surprisingly, actually. The one that I was not a fan of her choice was the one that you were like, oh my gosh, I love her mask. She was kind of just standing in that dark hallway right before the wine cellar. You remember the one I'm talking about?
Yeah, but jump scares are the easiest scares to do, and you never know if they are a newer actress or actor. So that's my thing with it. You know, I don't like when haunts rely solely on jump scares. So, you know, jump scares aren't really my favorite kind of scare, but I understand it.
Yeah, I mean, true. But see, she didn't she went for the more psychological, just sort of, which is always a beautiful thing. I love the psychological stuff. But I feel like with different characters, it works better, and in different scenarios, it works better. Where she was, I don't know that the psychological aspect worked.
Well, see, I got a jump scare from that, so that's really interesting to hear because we got two different scares then.
How did you get a jump scare from that?
Because you went past and then she jumped at me because I was behind you.
Ah, so see, I didn't catch that. So, I guess I have to give her praise then, if that's the case, because if she actually, one, made you jump, one, congratulations, that is the most impossible thing on this planet to do.
She did.
Oh, she didn't scare you?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry, you're not getting praises anymore. But, I do have to applaud her because you said that she sort of jumped at you when you came by as opposed to when I came through.
Yeah, she didn't go for the obvious, first-person scare, which I applaud her for. Because it is so easy to let your excitement get the better of you and immediately go for the very first person.
Agreed. Now, the only thing with that is, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, there's only two of us. So, I mean, you have like a 50-50 shot. Technically, there is no middle person. There's the front and the back. So...
Right, but she could have jump scared you, and then I just would have experienced it, through you, and then that would have been it.
That is true. So, good on her for doing it the way she did. I do have to, knowing that now, I will take back what I said, because I thought she was just trying to pull a psychological moment on me.
And she did. She just jump scared me right after.
So, okay, I take it back. Congratulations. Ansley fought for you. Ansley, advocate for haunt actresses.
I got you, fam.
So that was in the main haunt. That was my only one that I wasn't a fan of, really. In the bottom haunt, the downstairs one, now I will give a little bit of grace to this one, only because it has been explained to us that this is where they sort of throw people to test them out. And knowing that before going through there, I can't be nearly as harsh. But what I will say is I would have liked all the actors that were down there, out of the four, because there was four down there, and I really want to say who my favorite was of the four that were down there. And my favorite one
It's going to be the clown, isn't it?
It was the clown. He was my favorite one. Absolutely. So shout out to you, clown. Loved it. But I really would have liked to have seen those four actors possibly try and come up with a story or something more that they could have done with their scenes. Particularly, I guess the zombie-fi kind of guy, there's not a whole lot he could have done, but he did give us an elementary scare, in my opinion.
To be fair, it was one of the rarer elementary scares, but it was still an elementary scare. We got a roar.
Yeah, and it was a pretty, kind of a weak roar at that. It was not it was more kind of almost like...
Literally almost said roar.
Yeah. In fact, I think he did, honestly. If I play the audio back, it almost sounded like a straight roar.
Yeah, so wasn't a fan of that, and I will say, had we not, heard what this haunt is basically supposed to be, I would have hated it a lot more.
Yes, I definitely agree. But like I said, knowing what we know, that does, I think, this is like one of the only times in Terror Talk's history that you're going to ever hear us be like, knowing some background to it will give it a little bit of grace because we know that it's not necessarily meant.
It's the first time in history that you will say that.
Okay, fine.
I've said it a bunch.
Okay, fine. It's the first time I'm going to be nice, give a little bit of grace here, because it basically was explained that this particular haunt is not necessarily meant to scare the bejesus out of you. Like,
I mean, but it is a haunted house. It's supposed to scare you. Like, that's what you pay for.
Well, I mean, it scared me. They did get me in that one.
They did. But it was really, like, big and open, and while I know, like, that is what it's supposed to be, I don't know, like, I didn't enjoy it near as much as I enjoyed the, like, upstairs haunt. But, like I said, I am super, super, detail-driven, and there was not a lot to look at. It was a bunch of fences and a couple of props here and there.
Yeah.
And while I do understand, because, I mean, Twitch did tell us, hey, we kind of kept it that way because we want to be able to put these actors in here and see how they would act in a more open situation where they can't really hide, and there's not like a lot of there's not a lot of animatronics, but it was really weird. Like, there was this front area, and it was pretty themed, considering.
Yeah.
And then you go through, and it's just a bunch. Jeremy said it best, and I don't know if he's going to clip it in or not, but he said it looks like a warehouse that they would keep their haunt stuff in the off season.
Yeah, I think I said like it was the basement is what it felt like, which is ironic because it is the basement of that building.
It is technically the basement.
But they quite literally went for the basement. Like, it just felt like, oh, because there was like, you walked by a corner and it had a bunch of miscellaneous stuff sitting in it that looked like it belonged to upstairs in the haunt or in previous years had been in the haunt. Don't get me wrong, I love the concept of, hey, let's, have this more open environment type haunt or space to throw these newbies in, throw these people that we need to test them first before we can put them up into the main haunt. Like, I get that. That's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing. But I think they could, if nothing else, maybe have it still be that, but flesh it out more. Add some detail to it, and maybe give us a second storyline down there, but still have those elements of the open room where you can throw in those new actors to test their strength out in the midway.
Like, you can keep it to where you don't have a lot of animatronics in there, and there's not like places for them to hide and just jump out. That is totally acceptable. Just have a little bit more for people to look at, because your best scares are going to come when people are distracted.
Right. And there is a very good chance that moving forward in the years to come, that they could expand this downstairs portion, because even they said, they're planning at least a few years in advance, so they're already looking ahead to the future. But I hope that that future does entail an expansion to downstairs and even some expansion to upstairs, because if you look at sort of the layout and the way you walk, it's kind of clear that it almost follows your traditional haunt format. Down one way, loop back around up another way. Down one way, but basically back forth. It's a very stereotypical, almost theme park style haunt, where it's like, we've only got this much space, this is how we have to fit it in this box.
Yeah, but at the same time, you do end up having to get kind of creative with the space, and that's just the easiest path to lay out where you know that you have that space.
And that's a fair thing. I mean, I get that. But when you look at this building and you see what we saw, because we got a little bit of a deeper look into the building itself, because we saw parts that, the typical patron is not going to see, because, we got to sort of go into where the actors were getting ready and hang out in there, because that's where we did our interview. You can see how much of that they're using, and it seemed like there's not a whole lot to it. It even seems like there's an even more upstairs area right there where we were standing. So clearly that front part is where all of the actors getting ready spaces and things like that. But then once we came out of the secondary haunt, I pointed out to you, I'm like, you see how far this building goes back. And I said, just remembering how much we went through, there's no way we went from end to end on that haunt. It's not possible.
So, something that I told you while we were in the moment and actually talking about the haunt, and we do have some, information and confirmation there. One thing I will say is that we don't know how much of that is designated to what, and we don't know how much of that they own. Because they could very well not own the attic space, or they could be using it for storage. Because you're not gonna... They said that they were planning for, years in advance.
Right.
And in that case, then they're already gonna have some ideas. They may have already bought props for certain rooms, certain things. And you don't know if those props are being stored in the quote-unquote attic area, like the upstairs area that's above the upstairs haunt.
Well, he said that where they were storing stuff, they have a separate building just for storage.
See, I didn't catch that.
Yeah. He had said that, because we asked, so when you get to Folklore, one of the things you'll notice is you have the main building, but behind it is a slew of other buildings. There is a crap ton of buildings there. And so you're looking at this and you're like, man, why is all of this not being utilized? Well, we got the answer for that. They only own that building and then the storage building that they have there. So, that being said, the main building itself is not where they're storing anything. They're storing it in a storage building there on site. But I see what you're saying. I mean, you do make a very valid point. You'll never hear me say those words again.
Even though you know I'm right.
It might snow tonight, folks. Jeremy's being sincere and actually listening to his lovely co-host. But,
yeah. Listen, though. He admitted it. He doesn't listen to me.
Depending on the day. In any case.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, you heard it here. Anyways, moving on. I'd love to see if there is a way they can just make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And honestly, and I know this was your first time coming to it, and so it's my second time, or third, fourth time, whatever. But because I've been there so many times already, I've actually seen a lot of these big major set pieces. They've been there for the time that I have been there, and so I've seen them in some form or fashion already several times. So I honestly wouldn't mind going through and seeing a complete and utter overhaul of the entire attraction. I love the theme that they went for. I love the winter estate thing that they've got going. It's a great story. But I want to see either somehow that get taken and gone in a new direction, or just bring us something totally new that we haven't seen before. And I know that's a big thing to try and do in a year's time between, haunt seasons and whatnot. And, I mean, in some cases it's absolutely possible. In other cases it's absolutely not. But that is one thing I would love to see. I'd love to see where that haunt can go. Because I feel like, as long as they've been around, they have the potential. They have some really great things about them. I remember going through there when they had 3 haunts still. And so they have made changes in places. So that in the past, it used to be like the main. I think it was called the Manor, is what it was called back in the day, and that was the main haunt, and then you had the Asylum as the second haunt, and then they had a haunt called Overload, which was the basement haunt, and I remember absolutely trashing Overload because it was nothing but basically sirens and fences the entire way through. So already what they have downstairs is leaps and bounds better than what it was back then. But all of that to say, I would love to, like, if it's even possible, let's get rid of the manor aesthetic. Let's get rid of the estate aesthetic. Let's get rid, because there's still remnants of the hospital there. Let's get rid of the hospital. Let's go for something brand new. So I would just like to see if there's a way to completely overhaul the story, go somewhere completely new, possibly even completely out of left field even. Like, let's just, like, let's see some new stuff. Because, like, you know, the front house, as amazing as it is, I've seen it every time. So for me, it's like, well, you know, I've seen it once, I've seen it twice, I've seen it 3 times. And I get it, you know, some haunts have their staples of their attraction, and maybe that is one of those staples that they're like, you know, people seem to love it, let's keep it. But I would love to just really see where they can go with it. So yeah.
You know, with this being my first time seeing it, I really cannot confirm nor deny that they need to overhaul it. Because I think it was great. And it's one of those, it's a very story-driven haunt, like we were saying earlier. I would like to see them do something different with the maze area. Like, I get the purpose behind it now and why you're doing it. It's not just part of the haunt. It's also a teaching tool and a tool that y'all are using to figure out who you can put in midway and in the top house. And while I do get that, it was very blah. Like, I'm not meaning that in a super bad way. I'm not meaning that in a bad way at all. Because, like I said, we got to hear why it was the way it was. But I love the idea, but the execution was not great to me. But again, I'm the very detail-driven person. I'm very ADHD. I need constant stimulation. So, that being said, if I'm just looking at fences, oh, I'm back on a farm. Or, oh, I am, you know, back working at the jail that I used to work at. Okay, blah, blah. And, you know, oh, look, there's an actor every once in a while. And then it is immediately done. Whereas with the upstairs haunt, there was so much to see and look at. There was all these bright colors and all these lights and all kinds of stuff. And I'm not telling you to make it like a kindergarten classroom where it's all bright and cheery and colorful, but give me something to look at.
I don't know. Kindergarten classrooms that are bright and cheery, that's kind of scary.
Oh, no. While we're on the topic, though, got my heart broken a little bit, guys.
Why?
Because I still have not got to see that Necromancer animatronic in action.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember, but when we went through for the Valentine's haunt, which would have been my first time, I mentioned that I absolutely loved him and I really, really wanted to see him work. And I kind of attributed the fact that he didn't work to it possibly being because it was a lights out haunt, and sometimes your power has different circuits, and he may have been on one of the circuits that was off so that you could have the lights out haunt and still have a couple of lights here and there. But that apparently was not the case because he wasn't working on, oh my gosh, it broke my heart. Because you've got this big, beautiful animatronic, and you can tell he's not just a stagnant figure. Because he's got the hydraulics and the poles and stuff in him. Like in the back of him. Hold on. He's got all of these hydraulics and everything that are visible, but just barely. So you know he's not like a statue because he's not like whole. He's in pieces so that he can move, and he didn't move, and it was so upsetting to me.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with her on this one because, you know, it was already disappointing once before to see it not move and to come back in the middle of peak haunt season. And I get it, it's a Thursday night, so, I mean, but I'll tell you, it was pretty bopping for a Thursday night.
Yeah, it definitely was.
And to see that and it wasn't working, that was definitely a disappointment. And
Has he worked in the years that you've been?
It's been so long I couldn't tell you. Actually, possibly not, because I don't remember them even having that part when I went through it back in the earlier years. But I could be wrong. No, they wouldn't have had that part because that's where the asylum and all that would have been. So he didn't even like come into the picture until recently. And it is very disappointing, especially given the fact, and I will say, they've got animatronics in other places all over this haunt. I mean, it's not like, you know, they're not sparing or they're not gypping you in terms of that. Like, you're going to see animatronics all out. But when you have something that big and that amazing, you want it to work.
Yeah, he's like 6 foot tall. He commands the entire room, and he just stands there.
Right, and you know, I guess it wouldn't be so bad if there were some actors in there to, you know, interact with him or something. You know, maybe drive the scene somehow. But given that, you know, he doesn't move, there's no actors there to work with on it either. It's just kind of like it really becomes a prop, a set piece, and it's just decorative.
I mean, and part of the story was that the lady of the manor is some kind of witch, right?
Right, and she practices necromancy.
And he's like right in front of the room, right? So put in a throwaway line about you putting him under like a spell or something so he cannot move.
Yeah.
Like, make it a part of the experience if it's not going to move.
Or just take him out completely. I mean,
yeah, that would honestly kind of be better, because while he is a very big and like intimidating and awesome figure, if he doesn't move and do what he's supposed to do, and I can tell he is supposed to, what's the point of having him in there?
Yeah, that was definitely a letdown. But where there's letdowns, there's also some plus sides, and I do want to give a shout out because you were talking about the actors earlier, and you know how we got our first roar and such. But there is one actress in the whole haunt that I have to give mad props to. Because all the actors and actresses, they all had, you know, stories that they were going with and making up as they went along. You know, nobody went with the typical sort of he's going to get you or sort of deal. The maid, when you come through the living room the second time, I don't know why, but her story that she told, I can't even remember it now, but like,
she was saying that the kids were going to put her in the wall, and
yes,
it wasn't her fault, but she never told you what wasn't her fault, so it kind of left you guessing.
Yes, and that was, like, to me, I was like, okay, like, that's creative, right? Like, talking about being put in the walls and stuff like that, that was a creative touch, and I was really, I'm going to steal Ansley's line here, I was proud, because that...
You can't be proud, you don't know them!
Guess what? If you can be proud, I can be proud.
Yeah, but I'm Mama Ansley. I'm a mama to all the haunt actors.
Okay, well, I'm still proud of her. She did a wonderful job. So, girlie, if you're listening, shout out to you. That was a wonderful touch. I love the little story you created, and you deserve all of the praises for that.
Yeah, and I absolutely love the fact that as we were coming in, she was quiet, and then she built up as we were going around that curve.
Yes, it wasn't just, here, let me give it to you all at once. It's
let's build up to it. Let's give you something to go out on.
Yes, and that is something, like, you can tell, I don't know if this is true, if she really did this or not, but to me, that just says I spent a lot of time thinking about this character. Maybe she is one of those seasoned actresses who has, done, perfected her acting, or even, dabbled in some theater, or maybe she's a writer even. She has some sort of know-how of how a character has to have this arc and grow and to tell their story. And you got like her whole little thing in that one, what is it, the joke they say in marketing? You have to have the 15-second elevator pitch. You got to sell me on it in 15 seconds.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, but she did it. Like, she sold us, like, we knew who she was because she was talking about, like, oh, it's all so dirty, we've got to clean it. We knew, like, she was running from something, and we knew that she was afraid she was going to get put in the walls.
Again. Because she did say again.
Oh, yeah. So, that right there, it's like, boom, we have all the information we need. You have now effectively freaked us out and scarred us for life. Congratulations.
She totally owned that character, so I am also going to give you a shout out and mad props, girl.
Yes. I don't know who you are, but you know who you are, and that's all that matters in the grand scheme of things. By the way, the night that we came, in case you're wondering, is a Thursday night. In case you're listening to this and you're like, was that me? I don't know if you're always working in that room. So, it was a Thursday night and you were working that room. And we were the two people in the Exorcist hoodies. So,
matching hoodies.
Yep. So go back and run through every person you've ever seen in your life, and of the thousands of people who come through this season, and try to remember us, because we're shouting you out. So yeah, that was a positive. If I can be picky for a moment, and I think I can.
You usually do.
I do have a couple gripes. I just a couple, not too many. For one, I feel like they have a good concept of building a great set, right?
Yeah.
And they have, I'll give some praise here in between the griping. They have done the beautiful thing of, one of my big pet peeves is hide your damn roof. And they hit it.
It's hard to do in some of those scenes, though.
But they did it all throughout. And that, to me, I think the only room that it was not specifically done in, and I didn't mind it so much, I minded a little bit, but it didn't bother me nearly as much, was the very first scene, because you were walking into the house, you were walking up to that facade, and so I didn't mind that. I could see the roof there, but once you got in there, they used the, like, what is it, camo netting sort of deal?
Yeah, camo netting is basically, nets that have like leaves and stuff on them. A lot of hunters use them to hide their deer stands and their duck stands. And army people use it to hide their vehicles and stuff while they're out in the field.
Well, they use that throughout the hunt, and for me, that hid the roof. I mean, yes, I know, you can still see part of the roof through it, like it's not going to completely hide it from you.
But it gives you an illusion that it's not there.
Correct. And that, for me, that's all I could ask. And there are haunts that I have absolutely raked over the coals for not doing something as simple as that. Because to me, I think that's a very simple thing. It's a simple ask, for one, but it's a simple thing to do on top of that. It's not difficult to make that happen. So, props.
In some cases, it is difficult to make that happen. Like you were saying, the very first area where you could see the roof.
Yeah.
In areas like that where it is so kind of spaced out and you kind of have to do it like that, it is hard to do because unless you hang stuff from the rafters and have it hanging down low, there's really nothing to connect it to.
I mean, and that's fair. I mean, like I said, I get it. Sometimes there's just absolutely no way to do it. You can't. It's unavoidable. But if you have the power to do it, do it. It makes a world of difference, especially to me. But so that's a praise. Now to harp on something. They have these wonderful sets. They have lighting throughout. But I feel like that lighting could be so much more than it is. Because I feel like there was a lot of really, really dimly lit areas.
And very strange lights, too.
Yes.
Like, lights that didn't really make sense. Like, we stood in the queue line for a minute before we were coming. We got kidnapped and brought into the haunt, basically. But the queue line is supposed to, I guess it's kind of supposed to look like kind of like a museum room.
Yeah.
And they had this, like, water effect blue lighting on it, and it didn't really make sense. I know you're not going to have, like, bright-ass white LEDs and lighting up the entire room, but I didn't quite understand the water effect. It would have sold a little bit better if the water effect was not a thing.
Yeah, I agree. Like, so I'm going to dive into my theater bag of tricks here, just to, and this may not even be a thing that's in the budget. I don't know. But it's something worth mentioning and worth noting. One of the age-old tricks we use in the theater are gobo lights. And those are for those of you who don't know, those are lights that have patterns on them. So they have like some that look like tiles, like rock tiles. They have some that look like water waves. They have some, basically they add texture to your scene. So if you're looking at a stage, these lights are on the floor and it can look like a cobblestone floor. And it adds something to it. I don't know if that's something that they can invest in or not, but I would like to see, because you can get them pretty cheap on Amazon, little tiny ones that would do your, do what you need. I think I bought some for my stage performances for like $200, and that was like a set of 2 of them. So you can get several of these. I mean, hell, if you spend $1,000, if they're 2 for $200, you can walk away with, that's 10 of them at least. And just one of those in a scene, when you have that gobo lighting mixed with the fog, it adds a layer of interestingness to it. It's not just a stagnant, as we say in the theater, wash. So, a lot of the scenes, it was just like, here's some red lighting and maybe like a hint of green lighting. It was a lot of like neutral colors and neutral color washes. And so I think if they could somehow invest in that and use, like, especially in that room where you're talking about, get some gobo lighting and put them up in the rafters, and you just point them in different places and add that.
But still, right?
Right, yes.
Like not moving around.
Correct. They would just sit there, and that pattern would just, basically project onto the walls, onto the scene itself.
Yeah, because they had that same lighting in that room with the throne right as you're coming out of the first haunt.
Yeah.
And it messed up some of our pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gave like a weird shadow on Jeremy's face. It kind of looked like he tried to paint camo on his face with like red and like a neon blue paint. And on mine, it kind of gave me this weird shadow, and it kind of looked like I had a skeleton mask on.
Yeah, it was weird.
Which would be cool normally, but like if you want like pictures, good pictures that you can like put on your Facebook or something, or your like Twitter, Instagram,
you ain't getting that.
It's kind of hard to get those pictures if the light's moving around and messing with your camera.
Right. So I mean, granted, that's a very nitpicky thing, but it does make a world of difference. And
it does.
So that's one thing I would love to see, change that lighting all throughout. Really just invest in some cool stuff. There are cheap toys, like I said, you can find anywhere. And, if you have the right people, who know how to play with them and work with them, then you can do some really cool stuff with the simplest of tricks.
But, if you don't want to spend all that money on those, just maybe, use some color in the lights that are just white, and maybe take the ones that are patterned, like the water ones. Honestly, I would do something like that on a couple of, gravestones that are in the cemetery, or, in the plant room, because where you have, outside, you're going to have, rain, or you're going to have, I don't know, fog or puddles, water. It makes sense. But in, an area that kind of reminds me of, a museum, or, in the photo area, it just kind of does not make sense. There is places you can use those lights so that you don't have to just waste them. But I think finding a better place would be, better. And where the wash lights that Jeremy was talking about are, I would pick a color that's right for the scene. I don't know, with the altar area where we meet Lady Winter. That entire room was white. And I understand it's kind of supposed to look like a church, but if she is summoning evil, do a red tint to it. In the doctor room, his room was also very white lighted. Maybe a green or a blue, because it makes it interesting to the eye, and I know sometimes it's a little bit harder to see details and stuff with the colored lighting, but it does make it a little bit more interesting, and it makes your eye want to look for more.
Yeah. Agreed. So yeah, that's just a nitpicky thing, and my other nitpicky thing is just the length of the attraction. I'd like to see it longer, but we've already touched on that.
Yeah,
so.
There's nothing they can really do about that right now.
Right. So, let's get into the rating. Ansley, what are you going to rate it?
I am going to give it... I'm going to give it a 4. Obviously, I was going to give it a 4.5 just because of the animatronic not working, like I said, and then that elementary scare. I'm kind of a hard person to please. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I really did not like the second half of that haunt. I did not like the maze. It was not interesting to me. So, I can't give y'all higher than a 4 because of that. And like I said, I do understand the premise behind it, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely love that, because it's not every day you get haunt owners that actually want to bring other people into the Midway. I've only worked Midway maybe twice in my entire scare actor career. And I've been a scare actor for 4 or 5 years now?
Yeah, something like that.
So, it is hard to find those haunts that will let you work in the Midway. So, it is very respectable that you are giving them the opportunity to prove themselves worthy of working in the Midway, because the Midway is your first interaction with this entire haunt. So, I do love that. But it was very boring, guys. I didn't really like that there was no cohesion. The props that were there were very random, and I kind of got what Jeremy was saying about it looking kind of like a storage area that just happened to have scare actors in it. It was very strange to me, the lack of cohesion, walking through, and it's just fence after fence after fence. When he said maze initially, I thought it was going to be like what we have seen in the past, where it is walls that you can't see through. Because I was looking through and seeing scare actors and being like, oh, I see one over there. He's going to jump out right here. And then he did. He scared the crap out of Jeremy because I guess Jeremy wasn't paying attention. But, I mean, and I get it needs to be open for that reason. But you can also have the same effect and have a more interesting area for them to act in. So, I got to give y'all a 4. I'm sorry.
I am going to give a 4 as well, for a lot of the same reasons. The second haunt was kind of meh. I'd like to see it fleshed out more. Like I said, the thing with the lighting and the length. I need that haunt to be longer. I say 12 minutes, it just ain't long enough for me. So, 4 for Mansley, 4 for me. That's a grand total of, drum roll please, 4 screams. Folklore Haunted House is a 4 screams rated haunted attraction, rated by our Terror Talk Scream Scale. So be sure to go check them out this haunt season. They're located in Acworth, Georgia. Little small town. Great place. I will say, still, I've stood by this, this year it's a little harder to miss them because there was a cop out there, and you can see like the midway and all that now.
Yes, they actually have a midway.
Yes, but the sign out front is still minuscule. I want to see some more signage. Give us some more stuff to say that you're there in that area.
Advertise.
Oh, well, the advertisements are there. I want signs on the street.
Okay, but advertising includes signs on the street.
Okay.
It was great. I say, a lot of the stuff, I recognize some stuff from the few times I've been here, but the last time she was here was for the Valentine's haunt, so it was all candlelit. Yeah. So it was like a totally different experience for her. So I think that was really cool.
This was like my first time experiencing it, and I was very happy about it.
Awesome. Yeah. I do have a question, because I've asked this, well, I haven't asked this, but I've thought of it before every time I've come here. There's a lot of buildings on this property. How much of it is y'all's?
So we are this main building, and then we have a storage in the basement of another one. So there's multiple businesses here.
Oh, okay, I got you. Because I'd always wondered, I'm like, why don't they use all of it like this?
It's unfortunately we don't have all of it.
Dang, man, that would be awesome.
If we ever do, there's plans, but for right now we're just primarily this building.
Right. I'm trying to think if there's anything specific I want to ask. How the things that y'all have changed and were new to the haunt this year. How long did it take y'all to get all that up there?
I mean, thankfully we're in a permanent location, so we've had some of that stuff sitting in our loading dock since the spring, getting ready to get put in.
Nice.
We're thinking a year, 2 years out already.
Awesome.
In regards to what's coming. So.
Okay, very cool. The secondary haunt, the warm up haunt kind of. Any plans to expand it into something a little more than what it is?
As we go along, it's kind of a new thing for us as far as really trying something like that.
Yeah.
So we're seeing how it works for the season, and like anything else, you look at the end of the season, you look at it, and go, what worked, what didn't. Tweak the things that make it a little more effective, keep the things obviously that do work,
right,
and just kind of go along from there. So.
Yeah, because I don't know about you, but I thought going through there's a lot of potential there, and I could see more than the 4 actors that are in there, adding more in there and just really having fun down there. That can be a really fun place down there. I love that. So this is sort of a random question, but we do like to ask it because it helps us gauge the actors and such. Are the actors volunteer or are they paid?
They're paid.
Okay. So that's good. I mean, nobody was not giving more than their all, but we always ask that just in case they are. We can be like, hey, you need to know about this. We saw y'all have done some expansion out here in the Midway, and any plans to further that a little bit more, do some more stuff with that?
Probably. There's always plans.
Love it.
I know there's some things we want to do for next year. Make it bigger and better out there.
Awesome. I love that.
We've been experimenting with things out there. Again, what works, what doesn't work, taking some baby steps.
Right.
There are plans to expand even more.
Very cool. Well, I think if there's nothing else you can think of.
The only thing I can think to ask is if y'all do a scare class, kind of. I know some haunts will get their group together and do classes for the newer.
Yeah, so what we do actually every year is we have a 6-hour training class that everyone goes through. It goes through all the safety and legal stuff. And then we go through and show them every single scare they could possibly need to do here.
Nice.
We have them try each one, then we bring them into the attraction and have them try it there, so that by the time opening night starts, they know what they're doing.
Awesome. So they are very well trained then.
Yeah, we never
you
put
can
them
tell.
on the spot and go, figure it out.
Right.
You're not going to get a good show that way.
Yeah. No, you can definitely tell they all are on top of their game, so we were very impressed. We definitely really enjoyed it. All right, well,
cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. If you do have any questions or anything, just feel free to message the page, and we'll be happy to answer it for you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having us. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us, and we will have that review up very quickly. So we're cranking them out this year, so sure. We're moving fast. So,
but I would just like to see that. So go check them out this haunt season. Let them know that Terror Talk sent you, and let them know what you liked, didn't like, all that fun stuff. Maybe you agree with us, maybe you disagree with us. So, until next time, be safe out there.
Be excellent to each other.
Don't text and drive, and we'll see you in the fog.
Hey, you guys survived to the end of the show. Congratulations, you're all final girl material. But don't worry, you'll have plenty more opportunities to fall victim to our horrifying creations throughout the season. Afraid to miss out on more content?
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Don't worry, we've got you covered. All you have to do is like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. You can also subscribe to our Libsyn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else podcasts can be found. Want to keep up with us regularly? Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok for all of our social media fun.
Don't fall asleep.
Go check out our website for our written reviews at theterrortalks.wixsite.com.
What are you going to do with those pies, boys?
Want to help us keep the lights from flickering? You can give us a one-time donation of $3 to support the show by visiting glow.fm/theterrortalks. Simply go to that link, and your one-time donation will go back into keeping the show running from Michael, Freddie, and Jason for another day. You can also subscribe to our Patreon by going to www.patreon.com/theterrortalks. Once there, you can subscribe to one of our two tiers, our lowest tier of $1 a month and our highest tier of $5 a month. That's less than 1 cup of coffee, and it all goes right back into our show. Anything else we're forgetting?
I tell you, Michael Myers is here in this
town.
town.
Please give us a 5-star written review on Apple Podcast and let us know that you saw the show. And if there's something you liked or even didn't like, you can also contact us directly at theterrortalks@gmail.com. Well, that does it for this spooky showing. Be safe out there and beware of ghouls, goblins, and monsters. But until next time, happy haunting.